and welcome to Afflictions Sugarcoated, a podcast where we sugarcoat some of the world's so-called afflictions and rate their plausibility on a scale of 1 to 5. I'm Minnie Kim, and today we'll be sugarcoating the 2024 Paris Olympics. Now, to be fair to all of you who have just heard about enough about the Olympics, I wasn't going to do this topic this month. It seemed so obvious and cliche, but then again, so many interesting things happened, as they usually do when nations and Parisians gather together to watch people sweat, bleed, cry, and vomit, all while performing a very, very intricate action that is considered a sport via a very odd definition. Yeah, welcome to the Olympics. I guess I'm only covering the very basics of the Olympics as well as what happened to South Korea during it, and this is probably the first time I've explicitly used the word South instead of North, because prior to the Olympics, I always thought that it would be pretty impossible for me or any other person to do this semi-weird podcast thing while my family was starving to death under a cruel dictatorship. But then again, things happened in the Olympics that made me question a lot of things, especially about Korea as a whole. So I will be going over some sentiments of South Koreans in the Olympics, as well as other big events that people generally went crazy over. Sentiment number one. I feel like the Olympic opening ceremonies are always crazy. It has always been, and hopefully it never stops being crazy. See, this is probably going to be the first Olympics that I actually remember. I don't remember the Tokyo one because I don't know, I just don't remember it. And before the Tokyo one, I don't really remember anything. Not only about the Olympics, but also my life. 4 years is a really long time. That's why some athletes literally go to the Olympics once. They have one shot. Seems right out of an Eminem song. It's not go big or go home. It's win and go home, or lose and go home. That's why they cry, I guess. This year, the controversy was a little something else. As all of you probably know already, making fun of Christians and whatnot is probably not the best idea because there are a lot of Christians and then a few thousand Christians gathering to pray. I mean, it was very pretty, all things aside, the prayers. So I guess it follows every sports event, the World Cup, the Olympics, politics. Not so much for the regional games because those limit the scope, or maybe it's just that a lot less people are there to notice it or criticize it. But aside from that, I think Paris lived up to its name. We've almost become desensitized to the Eiffel Tower because it's practically in the camera shot of every outdoors event, especially that beach volleyball one. But it's only the opening ceremony when things are so grand and unbelievably alien to foreigners like me. Perhaps that's the same for French people as well. One rarely cheers or notices their country holding up a flag, painting their faces in the colors of their flag, and chanting for their best athletes. But it hasn't been so rare in the stadiums of France for the past few weeks. Sentiment number two, and this hits way closer to home. During the whole country and boat introduction of the opening ceremony, and yes, I'm choosing to focus more into the opening ceremony because that's what most countries remember most vividly, because some countries haven't won any medal for that matter. So during the whole country and boat introduction, the narrator, not the ones in TVs, but the actual live narrator of the event in France, did something quite interesting while introducing the Republic of Korea, which, by the way, is South Korea for those of you who don't know, and that's completely fine. I didn't know for the longest time in my life. I know we have a lot of confusing names. The narrator called out the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which perhaps the acronym DPRK is more familiar, as it will point to North Korea. It was a bit shocking getting identified as a completely different dictatorship country. I mean, it's not an insult to North Korea directly, but it's just that North Korea threatens South Korea almost every day, saying they'll nuke us and whatnot. For a lot of people, that stuff's just white noise on the news. Like, for a lot of Koreans, when they see, oh, Kim Jong un is threatening to nuke South Korea, we just call him crazy every once in a while and then move on. It's kind of like you being identified as a long lost quote unquote friend separated many, many years ago that is now a real pain in your butt. Yeah, it just doesn't feel good personally and definitely politically. Yeah, so the president did have to get an apology from the administrators and whatnot. But of course, the games march on. We got a sorry, we got some news coverage from international organizations, but definitely Korean newspapers. And I don't think a lot of people remember it now. Look, I don't expect the world to care much about this, and frankly, until I was sitting down to write this podcast, I rarely even thought of it after the incident. I guess that's just one of the things we'll have to accept, but I like to think that the Olympics was special to South Korea because it literally made us a better country. The 1988 Seoul Olympics literally changed South Korea's reputation from I don't know what North or South Korea is, they're all the same, to this is an economically prospering country with a lot of culture. I guess the irony is subtle but present. The event that helped us distinguish ourselves between the North ultimately ended up not being able to put the words correctly, anyways. Sentiment number three: how Korean national news decides to portray the Olympics is pretty interesting as well. For the longest time, they didn't show anything aside from Korean dominated sports like archery, shooting, table tennis, and badminton. Now, you do kind of get a hint of Asian sports in those names, but stereotypes are there for a reason. All four national channels play the same events with different TV narrators and celebrate the same things in pretty much the same way and the same words. Then all four national channels re-feature the highlights again and again until it becomes predictory that when I change the channel, I know what I'm going to see. Nationalism is great. It's especially great during global competition. And if there was a finals for a sport I'm not interested in, with a Korean in it, I'll probably choose that over a finals of Spain versus France in soccer, for instance. It's just how it works. I will support my country, but the soccer finals were between Spain and France. I didn't even know that Mbappe wasn't gonna be in there until I heard it in the news the next morning that France had lost. Sentiment number four: Novak Djokovic, which I'm very sorry if I'm butchering that name, he won over Carlos Alcaraz. Now, this is a very contentious one. There was a bit of a trip up by Nadal, then the complete mental fall of Alcaraz during doubles, and then Djokovic's win, achieving the one thing he couldn't achieve even throughout his many, many championships. What makes this even more inspiring is that he had lost to Alcaraz during Wimbledon finals a few months ago, and I mean completely lost, not even winning a set. During the interview, he started crying after seeing that his son was still smiling after his loss in the box. Then, after he had beat Alcaraz in a heated match, he broke down crying, sobbing for a few minutes before climbing up the stadium, getting touched, greeted, and videoed by hundreds of people on the way, and then embracing everyone in his box: his daughter, his son, his wife, and his coaches. And he sobbed like that for another few minutes, and then he later went on an interview and said that this was probably one of the greatest achievements that he had had in his tennis career. Mind you, that Djokovic is one of the best players of his age, and if I may tentatively add, probably the best. And I want you to just forget that he's the best player of his age. He's probably the best player of any age nowadays. I know that Sinner is technically first right now, but you know. Despite the immense support coming from Spain and tackling from the crowd, he won a gold medal for Serbia. It was probably the first and last gold medal for Serbia throughout the entire Olympics. I watched the game live, and it was a sensation. I don't like playing tennis, but I like the game, and I love watching it. This was another testament that it's not over until it's over. And I'm sure a lot more interesting, controversial, heartbreaking things will happen after I write this podcast, after I release it as well. But I don't think the Olympics need more sugarcoating. Because, damn it, I need not be romantic in order to feel romantic about this thing where all nations and even refugees gather to just play some sport really, really well. I give the sugarcoating of the Paris 2024 Olympics a 4.5. This podcast was written and produced by me, Vinny Kim. If you have any comments or reviews, please feel free to write any and all thoughts on your podcast reviews. If you'd like to suggest an affliction for me to sugarcoat, please email me via afflictionsugarcoated@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed watching the Olympics as much as I did. Okay, I'll talk to you in a month.